Welcome back to the Long War of the Chosen patch 1.2 class guides. Today we're looking at the final class. We're looking at the Spark. Now, obviously, technically, kind of a Spark is not a. Is it a class? It's not a soldier. It's a robot you build or rescue from the respective mission. And bit of a disclaimer to start it off with. Usually in my campaigns, for some reason I always end up with a single Spark, and most of the time I give them the same kind of spec. So again, one of those classes where I haven't really played around with the other specs, but I still have a general idea of what our specs might look like, and we're going to talk about this, and then it probably also becomes obvious why I prefer the one spec that we're talking about in a second here. The other thing is with me only building one Spark, which is, I think, probably a mistake, so it's not wrong if you have the materials and have a proving ground ready. Get a second, get a third Spark. They are really a strong unit. They don't get any willpower stat, so you can send them. Well, technically they have a willpower stat, but no, they can be sent on mission after mission after mission. Even if they get damaged or injured, they have a very, very short repair time, and it's really good to have. Really good to have. Of course, you have some downsides in terms of they obviously can't form bonds, and some of the officer skills don't work on them, but in general, they are a really strong addition to the team. They also have a higher infiltration time, so including them in your setup has some drawbacks. But yeah, so when we're looking at different class builds, we're always looking at what is the one perk row that defines kind of the build. And I think for the Spark, it's got to be your choice at the Knight tier. Are you going for enhanced repair systems and building a more tanky Spark? Are you going for assault servos and building a melee-oriented Spark? Or are you going for an enhanced targeting system build, which is a little bit more shooty? So we're going to look at that last one first here. And so enhanced targeting systems combines the old adaptive aim and holo targeting abilities. So when you use overdrive, you no longer get aim penalties for successive shots, and you apply holo targeting on all enemies hit. So two already strong perks from the past kind of combined. And if you intend to shoot a lot, then picking up Shredder as an additional source of shredding seems like a good combo. And really, it's like zone of control, enhanced defense system. It's not really improving what this build wants to do. Now, when we're looking at the other perks, though, then there's a lot of options, and it looks like a lot of alternatives, but it's not quite that way. All right, let's start at the start. Aspirant perk. So I think all of them are kind of viable no matter what kind of build you go for. Neutralizing protocol, you disable enemy's weapon, forcing them to reload somewhere. Now, reloading is a single action, so most enemies could reload and shoot, but if you force them to reload and then also maybe with another unit just run to a position where you flank them, most enemies will use their first action to move and get out of the flank, and then they don't have ammo, so they use the second action to reload. So it's kind of a control thing, right? There's a bunch of enemies where this won't work, but most of the time, if you can combine it with something else to take away their second action, and especially usually that's going to be flanking to make them move, this can be a really, really strong control feature. Formidable. 2 extra ablative. Keep in mind that Sparks do not get baseline ablative, so any damage they take will incur repair time. So having some sort of ablative is kind of nice to absorb a point of damage here and there. And then, of course, the explosion resistance is also just the cherry on top. So that's a solid survival perk, making it a little bit more durable. Then again, as long as you keep the injury times low, repair times are going to be relatively short. And then there is Flush. As we said before, it's really strong against the Chosen, because you can shoot them with Flush and they don't get their reaction, because they have to move. Now then again, the Hunter and the Warlock move as a reaction most of the time anyway, but it's especially good against the Assassin, making her Flush move rather than attack, or rather than moving towards you. Although like how the AI decides where it moves with a Flush is still something of a mystery to me. Also, again, for alien rulers, the Flush move overrides the regular ruler reaction, so that's kind of nice utility. And also keep in mind, 30 additional aim on the shot, you will still apply your full shredding to the target. So if you really need to shred something that you have a hard time hitting, Flush him, and you will apply shredding. Now, it's sort of targeting applies to all shots. I want to say normal holo targeting perk would only apply to standard shots. I think Flush should apply holo targeting, but don't quote me on that. I'm actually not sure right about that. Anyway. Moving on to the later perks. Now, it looks like there's options, but I think it's more like 2 sub-builds that are available here. First build focuses entirely on shooting, so you increase your damage with center mass. You get, with Traverse Fire, the option to get a second shot, pick up collateral damage for some cover destruction, and having another unit with disabling shot in your squad can never go wrong. So this is really then going in on the shooting role. The alternative option is to get some additional utility with your bombards and with your heavy weapons, which is then going for Rainmaker, Bombard, Salvo, so you can launch your heavy weapons or launch your bit for Bombard and still take a second action, and then Extended Reserves for an additional use of both heavy weapon and bombard. So you have 4 things that you can use for some AoE damage or for some cover destruction. Especially, so I personally prefer the top part. So Rainmaker, Bombard, Salvo, Extended Reserves. Because Bombard is basically unlimited range cover destruction. As long as your squad sees the spot, your Spark can throw their bit from anywhere on the map to that spot and take out cover. It's also, it doesn't have any scatter or anything. It's very reliable cover destruction. One thing I also like to use it for is to basically just destroy cover when I'm fighting a Chosen without hitting the Chosen, because you can pixel perfect aim that bombard. So basically that you expose them, have them out in the open without giving them a reaction, because, well, you didn't do damage to them. So just for that utility, my personal preference is the kind of top row, but I can also see a pure shooting-oriented build doing some work, so you're not relying on limited charge abilities. And especially collateral damage is actually really nice to have a cooldown-based, so not charge-based cover destruction option. Now, 4-turn cooldown is fairly long, so on most missions you only get to use it 2 times, and then you could say, hey, my Bombard I can only use 2 times once I have Extended Reserves, and that's kinda not turn ending, doesn't chew through my ammo, like not turn ending with Salvo, so yeah, up to your choice. Again, I think both are viable options. Personally, though, I prefer the top row path. Alright, now we're going a little bit into uncharted territory, and we're gonna look at what a melee build for Spark would look like. Alright, so let's look at a melee Spark. So it's all based around the kinetic strike attack, which is a dash move or move punch attack similar to Flash on the Shinobi, where you move towards an enemy and punch them in the face for devastating damage. The damage scales with your armor, so better armor attack, better damage here. Now, obviously, if you go for this kind of attack, you want everything that boosts this kind of attack. So, most importantly, assault servos. 10 aim, 2 damage to these attacks. Also against your Wrecking Ball. Wrecking Ball is an ability, when you activate it, you can run through walls during that turn. Now you can use that either to get to your target that you otherwise wouldn't be able to reach, or you can just sometimes just activate Wrecking Ball to just move through cover objects to expose enemies. Actually, now that I say that, let me actually double check one thing. So there's a Wrecking Ball ability that's activated, or this might be Wrecking Ball that when you activate Overdrive that you're running through cover. I'm actually, I haven't used that in a while. It's one of the two. Either way, you can destroy cover by walking through it, one way or the other. So the other thing improving your melee attack is Concussive Strike, giving you a second attack option. Stuns the target for 2 action points, so full turn stun. And taking this ability reduces the cooldown of Kinetic Strike by 1. By default, this has a 3-turn cooldown, which is also one of the reasons why I usually don't go for the melee build, because you're kind of investing perks into an ability that you can only use every 3 turns. That's kind of rough. So in the turns in between, you're kind of a spark that forgot to invest any talent points. Now, the other perks I might marked as core perks for the melee build would be damage control and zone of control. Lots of control stuff. If you're running in there to punch enemies, you might as well debuff them, reduce their aim and mobility, and also make yourself a little bit more durable when you're up there in front. Now, to round it all off, in terms of other perks, first row, what we said before applies here too, right? Oh yeah, one thing I forgot to mention with Neutralize Protocol, it does not end your turn. Like, even without Bombard, or Salvo rather, this is non-turn ending, so you can use it and then still do a second action. Formidable makes you a little bit more durable, and Flush for the utility. All good options. I'm kind of leaning towards Formidable, because if you're going in there and punching people, you're much closer to the enemy, they're much more likely to take shots at you, so having any sort of additional ablative is nice, because even if they hit your ablative, then you trigger damage control, I think. I'm not sure actually. Yeah? It says after taking damage, maybe damage to the ablative doesn't count for that. Again, the disclaimer of I haven't played with this or seen anyone play with this before, so I'm not sure 100% how these abilities interact. If you know how it works, if you've played this way, please let us know in the comments. I think we can all benefit from that. Now, when it comes here towards the end, there is Nova, dealing 6 damage to nearby units. No cost or cooldown, but consecutive Novas will damage the spot. So if you're willing to take some damage, you can Nova some enemies. Now, the only way really to take advantage of this would be if you have your Overdrive turn, run in to Kinetic Strike an enemy, and then still have maybe an action remaining due to Overdrive, and then can use Nova. That's kind of the ideal situation. So I should probably mention the way Overdrive and Kinetic Strike interact, unless this was changed, is while Kinetic Strike makes all your actions non-turn ending, the amount of action points that you spend for Kinetic Strike depend on how far you move to deliver that strike. So if you activate this, get 3 action points, and then punch somebody at the very edge of your movement range, that's still going to end your turn, because the long movement distance will eat your 3 action points. If you activate Adaptive Strike, overdrive rather, and punch somebody pretty much right next to you, then you're still going to be there with 2 actions remaining because they were in blue move distance. So then you can follow it up with a Nova and maybe a shot or a second Nova. The alternative here then is again collateral damage. So on non-punchy turns, you can assist with some cover destruction. That's never wrong. I think it's like since something like Concussive Strike, I think is such a required ability for the melee build. You can't get Bombard, and without Bombard, I feel like the top row, you got much less value out of Extended Reserve, much less value out of Salvo, and this way then also kind of less value out of Rainmaker. So that's why I'm kind of dismissing that top row here for the melee spark. And then finally, in the final row, you have impact compensation for more tankiness, or disabling shot for more utility. Then you have between Concussive Strike and disabling shot, you have a lot of control. You can theoretically, in an overdrive turn, even apply both, either stunning an enemy for a really long time, or disabling 2 different enemies. So definitely some decent utility here. I think it's still mostly held back by the long kinetic strike cooldown, but on the bright side, on the plus side, something that can't be understated, punching aliens with a big robot is freaking cool. So that's for me the main selling point of the Assault Servo spec. Alright, so let's look at what Spark can do with enhanced repair systems, and let's look at a tanky Spark. Alright, so enhanced repair systems, ERS, is our main perk here that we're kind of trying to build around. So it grants rapid repair and redundant systems abilities. So by default, you have the repair ability, which allows you to send your bit to a damaged robotic ally or to yourself and heal it, neutralize it, and repair all shredded armor. The last thing kind of being important for the tankiness of the Spark. So enhanced repair system makes it that this ability is no longer turn ending. And you get an additional charge of repair. Additional redundant systems means that you no longer suffer debuffs associated with the reboot ability. Reboot, again, being basically this ability here, your baseline ability, which is kind of just sustain, right? If you take fatal damage, you will not die. Your Spark will not die. Well, they're not alive anyway. They will not go kaput. Instead, they will basically sustain and wake up with 1 HP. Now, unlike the Psionic Sustain, once they come out of their stasis effect, they will have massive debuffs to a lot of their stats. It says it afterwards the Spark is crippled, and that's not an overstatement. They have massive aim penalties, they're kind of slow. It's bad. You kind of want to avoid that. This is the last kind of thing where, oh crap, it triggered, better see if we can get this guy safely to evac, and maybe use some repairs to get him out of there. So enhanced repair systems prevents those debuffs from occurring when reboot happens. So since you're kind of trying to tank a little bit, having this safety net here is kind of a nice option. So whatever tanky perks do we have in place? Damage control as before. After taking damage, you gain 2 armor. And then enhanced defensive systems grants you sacrifice and channeling field abilities. Channeling field means whenever you get hit, you get +1 damage to your next attack. And sacrifice is an ability where you can dash move to a position, and then any attacks on friendly targets in a certain radius are instead redirected to the Spark. It's sacrifice is the name of the game. You kind of trying to draw fire to yourself, hopefully surviving that, and depending on how many hits you took, then you have a charged up, due to channeling field, a charged up attack back at the enemy. The downside of this is that this charged up effect, let me actually just open up the advanced tooltip. Each point of energy channeled by the channeling field increases the damage of the next Elerium phase cannon attack by 1. So only your next shots will get increased damage, and it's just 1 point for each. I want to say for each shot you took. So if you miss your next shot, all that damage is going to be wasted. If it's an enemy on low health, and you're overkilling them, all that damage is going to be wasted. I think it's kind of a weak bonus, +1 damage, on a weapon that already does a lot of damage. Is not often, percentage-wise, not a great increase, and of course, as your weapon tech increases over the course of the campaign, the benefit of this kind of decreases, because +1 damage is really strong early game and falls off later game. That's just percentage-wise. Yeah, it's a less of an increase. So, I mean, that's the tank build, right? And then, of course, if we want to be tanking, we probably also want impact compensation to take reduced damage from each successive attack. So this really allows you to then survive those kind of sacrifice turns where you are drawing the fire from everybody. So it's a great set of skills to get you out of dicey situations that you wouldn't have been in if you took a different build. Anyway, alternative skills. Aspirant, same thing as previously mentioned applies, although this time I think with a stronger focus on formidable again. You want to be tanky, get that resistance to explosive damage, and get that extra AP. So this is probably rather the choice pick here. And then towards the end, again, you have basically 2 options. You can take some shooty perks, since you want to be shooting, to get the damage from channeling field applied to an enemy. But keep in mind, again, even with traverse fire and your ability to take 2 shots, only the first shot will be buffed by channeling field. And then, of course, the good cover destruction from collateral, or alternatively, you have your bombard for AoE cover destruction, but you're only gonna have single charge, since you're missing out on extended reserves, because I think impact compensation is kind of important if you want to be tanking anything really. And then salvo. Again, it's one of those things I haven't played. I'm generally not a fan of tanking specs or tanking abilities in XCOM, because either the enemy's too much damage and your tank dies too quickly, or you can't really control who the enemies are shooting at. Especially keep in mind that sparks have a natural defense that they come with. I mean, 25 defense, that's worse, and that's a late game spark, right? That's of course worse than a unit in half cover. But I think tanking is something where one other soldier got caught out in the open and I want to cover for them, and you never, like, they always will shoot that soldier out in the open rather than the spark out in the open. There's very little you can do to draw fire towards you. Alright, but enough ranting about tanking. Let's head over to the wiki, have a look at the XCOM abilities for the Spark, which is one of the additions with patch 1.2, right? That we now have AP for Sparks and XCOM abilities, and see what kind of fancy stuff they can get, and what kind of spec that would enable or rather promote. Also keep in mind, of course, stats will always be the same for your Spark. There's no variance in that, so we're not going to say, oh, if you have this kind of stat line, prefer this spec, because it makes no sense. Everybody has the same stats as Spark. All right, let's look at XCOM role abilities. So here we are in the wiki, looking at the XCOM role abilities. So I'm not 100% sure if there's anything that would really convince me one way or the other, because I'm most of the time building the Spark in that first build anyway. Now, if you get the perfect storm of something like Cutthroat and Blade Master to boost your melee damage, maybe, and if you have the AP to spare with an Implacable to get back to a better position after getting the melee kills, maybe I'd be more inclined to go for the melee builds, because that all adds up. You know, it's a significant amount of damage, additional accuracy most importantly, and a little bit more safety. Now, what I would definitely not take, even on a melee build, is probably Counter-Strike, which is your Blade Storm, your Spark Fist Storm, but this is only half damage attacks. And keep in mind, they also going to be reaction attacks, so they're going to be less accurate. So, you know, the normal Blade Storm on like your Shinobi still does full damage, so and has the same penalties as everything else. So I am actually not sure why this only has half damage. I don't think it would be overpowered if it did full damage, because you got a hit first in the first place anyway. So I'd say this feels rather weak, but then again, I've also never played with this, so what do I know? Now, one really strong pick for the more shooty-oriented builds is Rupture. Rupture on a Spark is actually really fantastic, even though in the regular class builds I've often kind of glossed over it and thought, okay, this is not necessarily good use of your actions. If you have an enhanced targeting system build Spark, we have Shredder, we have holo targeting, so you're telling me I'm the first guy to shoot at the enemy, I apply holo targeting for the rest of the squad, I shred their armor, and I also rupture them, so they take +3 damage from all future attacks. Sign me the hell up. In addition to that, if you have Overdrive active, Rupture is not turn ending, of course. It's a, you know, no action is turn ending with Overdrive. So you Rupture on your first shot, and then you yourself with your Spark can already take advantage of the +3 damage for your other shots. This is about as S-tier auto-pick XCOM row ability as I can imagine. Like, I can't think of any other perk where I'd say, yeah, no, this Rupture is nice, but I'd rather take X and Y because I don't have that many AP. I think this is like, you see that, you auto-pick it. No competition. It's so good on a Spark, I think. Other good shooty perks here to look out for are, of course, like something like Shooting Sharp, so you can get some better shots on enemies in cover. Keep in mind, you're also holo targeting them at the same time if you go for an ETS build. Open Fire, additional aim and crit against targets that are full health. With Shredder, you are more likely to be the first one to attack an enemy, so that seems really good. Then something like Damn Good Ground, Sparks can easily jump up on high ground, very likely to have the high ground advantage, so that's 10 extra aim, and the defense is not bad. It's one of the few ways for the Spark to actually get additional defense. So this is in terms of kind of shooting builds. Then of course you have things like Bring 'em On, increasing your crit damage. You don't really have many other crit perks in your default tree, so you're kind of stuck with the 40% crit chance on flanked enemies if you manage to shoot flanked guys. I don't think the Spark weapon has extra crit chance. You can of course get a laser sight for an additional 15, or with the continent bonus I think it goes up to more than 15. So you can get some crit chance that way, and of course if you get some combo ability here that increases your crit chance, close personal, aggression, or hey, open fire, 10 extra crit, you can get maybe some value out of Bring Them On, but generally I don't think that's going to be super valuable for you. Iron Curtain, one of the few ways to get a little bit of an AoE attack outside of your heavy weapons and bombard. But again, it's 50% regular damage. To be fair, with a fairly strong weapon. So maybe also as an opener on a group, reducing mobility, and then they can't maybe scatter that much into cover. Might be an option. Precision shot. It's okay, I guess. This is like, you know, if you want to build a shooty spark and nothing else in your XCOM row is shooty, then yeah, might as well pick up precision shot. Now, we do see some Overwatch perks here. Sentinel, Rapid Reaction, Ever Vigilant, Combat Awareness. You also notice the distinct lack of cool under pressure, which for me is always kind of the big enabler to actually make Overwatch viable. Because, for one, you get the 10 extra aim, but more importantly, your Overwatch shots can crit. And missing out on the crit chance on Overwatch is kind of a big deal of the Overwatch's damage. So I'm not convinced that the perks are going to be great. But again, it's often a matter of, well, if you roll them and nothing else is good, you might as well pick them up, right? Rapid Reaction is going to be a little bit like old school Hunter's Protocol, taking a bunch of Overwatch shots on groups that activate. It's not terrible, not terrible. In terms of tanky perks, Resilience, giving you extra critical hit chance. You are a unit that can't be flanked, so enemies don't get the flanking crit chance against you. If you also pick up Resilience, I want to say you're probably immune to critical hits from any sources. I can't think from the top of my head of any enemy that would still be able to crit you. I don't think they have that much crit chance to begin with. Enhanced Layered Armor, another very, very tanky perk. This is basically what the Assassin gets, where after taking 40% of the max health in a single turn, any further damage is reduced significantly. Now, you generally don't want to take 30% of your max health in a turn anyway, but this is really a good... For 10 points, you're basically guaranteed to not ever get one shot in a single turn with that damage reduction, especially if you stack it with damage reduction from your regular skill tree. So if you, despite all my shit talking of tanky specs, go for the tanky specs and have enhanced layered armor, you're one tanky spark. Similarly, something like impact fields, another incoming damage reduction, 33% in this case, but it's activated, so you need to be on top of it. Untouchable, of course, kind of a tanky perk, but you need to be able to get kills. Then there's Brawler for reduced melee damage, or rather reduced damage from attacks within 5 tiles. Well, melee and within 5 tiles. So another big damage reduction perk here. Now, talking about getting shot at, there are 2 I'm getting shot at skills here also with Intimidate. When targeted by an attack, the enemy has a chance to panic. This is based on your Spark's armor tech. And it's actually not a terrible panic chance. So, you know, for a free perk here, well, fairly cheap perk, that might be worth picking up if you have those points to spare. And then there's Triangulate. When you attack, you basically apply holo targeting to the enemy that attacked you, given 10 extra aim to them. Now, I'm fairly certain, so it's kind of, you know, 10 aim against them. It can still stack with things like various holo targeting effects. So it's an additional source of aim if you've been attacked in the first place. And then, yeah, hang on. There's one more being shot at. Return fire. You know, you shoot back at enemies that attack you. So now I'm not sure how, if you have both of these, if you already benefit from the 10 aim from triangulate on the return fire attack. Beats me. I don't think I've ever seen that combo of both skills at the same time, or you know, heard of anyone who had both. But you know, if the order of operations is correct here, that's pretty good. Then that's a pretty good combo. Alright, and finally, I forgot to mention earlier for shooty builds, chain shot, giving you some sort of multi-shot attack while your overdrive is on cooldown. Also keep in mind your second shot benefiting then from the aim buff from holo targeting from your first shot if you have enhanced targeting systems. So this is also a really good ability to pick up and allows you to shred a ton of armor, you know, if both attacks land. What I would kind of shy away from is things like failsafe, advanced logic score increase. Yeah, one second. Sorry about that. It was a very loud car driving by, and yeah. So while you can hack, I don't think this is going to be worth it. So I just wouldn't bother. That's probably not worth your AP. There's so many decent skills here. That's probably not worth picking up. Apex Predator also, you know, we talked about the randomness of it all, but now you also combat it with combo it with a unit that doesn't really have a high crit chance by default, so it will be tricky to get value out of it. One final work on Implacable. So I really like on most soldiers Implacable, you know, after a kill, get back into better position, get back to safety. That being said, on a Spark, your positioning might not be that important. It's not like that you can run back in full cover. You might be able to run out of line of sight, you know, jump up a building, down a cliff, anything like that with Implacable, sure, but I'm not sure that's 35 AP worth of positioning advantage here. As I mentioned before, though, for a melee build, I see some more value in it. Shooty build, yeah, you're probably in a decent position. Don't worry about it. Again, it's a matter of what you have, what is being offered in the first place. Alright, that concludes our specific class guides. I have one more class guide specific video idea lined up where I want to talk about, first of all, we'll probably combo it with a little bit of a triple. We're going to talk about officer skills. It's not really perk choices, but we're talking about the different officer abilities. We're going to take a closer look at the pistol skills, because I often mention, you can spend your AP on pistol abilities, but we never actually looked in detail at the pistol abilities, so we do that. And then also go in a little bit into detail on class synergies, which classes make sense to bring together, or make, you know, you want to bring together to make them really shine. We mentioned it a little bit in the individual class guides, but I think focusing on that a little bit might be helpful, and I'll see if I can cram that all into one new video, or if that's going to be multiple. For now, though, we're gonna take a break here. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.